I've gone through this presentation, and actually I've gone out and looked at almost every recommendation, actually out on the street, to look at the feasibility of that. I'm not going to go through all 104 recommendations, okay?
So how do we do?
How do you do? I'll give you a B, okay? Because I think there's some things that you actually missed in your analysis, and let me just try to describe it. So this area, not on Roosevelt Island, but over in Queens, the Ravenswood, Queensbridge area, I think you've misgauged that or misanalyzed that, and let me explain how I think that is the case. There are a lot of small neighborhoods around here, and there's actually a lot of flows where people go. So if you're going from here to Home Depot or whatever on Northern Boulevard, there's certain well-trod routes there. 36th Avenue is not one of them because it's too congested. Okay, there are a lot of other little routes in here. So, for example, the street, the one that you did, what you sort of thought was like, oh, getting rid of that 11th Street, left turn. Okay, that actually is a significant problem because there's a lot of side traffic. So if you're here in the morning, all the locals avoid 21st Street like the plague. Okay, you're going. Yes. Okay. And if I could just point, if it's okay to point.
Sure.
Okay. Is that you really need to be able to get people from here going over there, because what you have cut off is up here is, I think, 14th Street, which is one way. There's no alternative, and all you have is 12th Street there, which is a tiny road. So you're forcing a lot of traffic into those side roads or onto 21st Street on that. I mean, there are other, intersections that are like a better congestion relief would be to make this 4 lanes or whatever, to get rid of, you need a left turn here and basically 2 lanes going here to left turn into Costco. Is that really, that's the bottleneck on it. I'm not saying that there's a lot of, pedestrian improvements, but throughout that, there's a lot of flows there. Something that I just tried as an idea, asking people of different, capacities and varieties in Queens, okay, and Roosevelt Island is, what about making 21st Street 3 lanes both ways, in the same way Northern Boulevard is made 3 lanes both way during rush hour, because that's really between the Triborough Bridge and the Queensboro Bridge, because that's the big issue. On the Astoria Boulevard, 21st Street, 6-legged or 7-legged intersection, the problem that you have there is that it's a 2-minute cycle of which you only give 40 seconds to each of the legs. Maybe it was 10 years ago, I can't remember, but the prior cycle gave a balance of that, so you had traffic going both way and then protected lefts going at the same time. The problem that you can see at nighttime on this, because of that timing mishap, is that traffic backs up for blocks on 21st Street in both directions, because you're only giving them 40 seconds worth of flow rather than like the 60 seconds or flow or more elsewhere on the 2-minute, cycles on 21st Street. So I think that that's an example of taking some of these areas and looking how people actually flow, in the neighborhood. I'll send you my suggestions in writing, but I just wanted to say that I think if you take a look at common traffic flows, then you'll see that they don't play as well. Not that you can't take these improvements, and I do agree there's improvements on that, but tweaking them a bit.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to put up a slide now. Bear with us.
And the parking one's not going to work in many places because most of the people that are parking there long-term are merchants that keep feeding the meter every 40 minutes. So that's good idea, but the cause is the merchants who are there long-term, not the others.
Okay. Here's our contact information.
I'll send it to you.
You can send it to us. This presentation is also up on DCP's website. So if you have friends that are interested that couldn't be here tonight, it's nyc.gov/planning. There's a navigation bar on the left-hand side. Transportation planning is under reference. I don't know why, it's where they put us, but if you go to reference, you'll find transportation planning and you'll catch this study. So Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was very impressed with your work, and I think anything that improves pedestrian safety, I'm all for. Please get this to the, whatever her name is, the one who's the head of the Department of Transportation.
Polly
lady.
Trottenberg.
Yeah, because we're looking for Vision Zero in the city, and I think this goes a long way. Unfortunately, I disagree with Frank on a lot of his points. I think cars should drive more slowly. They're about to lower the speed limit anyway in the city of New York. And I think pedestrians should be prioritized ahead of cars and trucks. I'm very sorry, but that's my opinion. And as far as the flows and this and that, the cars will have to get used to driving a little bit more slowly in favor of yielding to the pedestrians, that they don't have any protection when they cross the streets.
Okay. I will just say, we have been working very closely with our colleagues at DOT and at New York City Transit, MTA, which is why, as Michael alluded to earlier, they've already taken one of our recommendations and moved the bus stop. So, we expect to continue to work with them. This gentleman here, I think, was next.
Yeah, could you expand on why you're recommending extending the Q19 and the Q39 buses to Roosevelt Island instead of the 104 and maybe the 103? Because the 104 is only about 2 blocks currently from Roosevelt Island, which goes into Astoria, and the 103 goes down Vernon Boulevard to Borden Avenue. And those are the locations where I think people from Roosevelt Island would want their bus transportation to go to, rather than the destinations on the 19 and the 39 to Woodside and Sunnyside. So, I
And
mean,
Glendale.
And
But-
those buses
39
will
goes all the way to
turn
Glendale
at
from
the
here.
top of
So just
100
what is your-
without coming onto the island, so that.
Frank, one at a time, please, one at a time.
so just what is your thinking behind those particular routes?
Okay, so we had thought about the 104 for quite a bit. We went back and forth with the MTA bus company through an untold number of emails and meetings about that. And at the end, we decided that going all the way up to Hallett's Point, that's where we wanted to serve primarily, because that's where some very large developments are going. And then back down to Roosevelt Island wouldn't be the best route, because it goes down to Broadway and then it goes down to Woodside. We felt that 39 would take people to the main hubs there, which would be Court Square and Queens Plaza instead. So that was our reasoning. Now, the 103 it'd be tricky, because you're coming up Vernon Boulevard and you're going onto the island. If the bus only went onto Motorgate, stopped at the top of Motorgate, and went and looped around, that in theory could work. But I'm not sure how the buses can they even fit around.
Yep.
There? Do they do that now?
Yep.
I know it's kind
That's
of
what it's
tricky.
designed for.
Okay, so that can be done. We can, that's why we're here today. We wanted to hear more ideas, things we missed. So
That's where I started. Gentleman said he gave us a B. How'd we do it? So if there's stuff that we didn't quite get right, you guys live here, you work here, you use these routes daily. That's why it's so important that we hear from you, because at the end of the day, we do want to get it right. That woman way in the back. Yes, ma'am.
First, thank you very much for a very thoughtful presentation, and specifically with respect as well to the bike network. And I also want to echo Rick's comments about the 2 buses, because I think that he has hit the nail right on the head. I have 2 questions. The first is, I wasn't entirely clear as to how you will improve bicyclists disembarking from the Queensboro Bridge more efficiently than they're able to do now, and connect with the existing bicycle network that you have. That's my first question. And thank you for your attention to that. And I am really confused as to why the Triborough Bridge has not been included at all, particularly with respect to the bicycle network. I mean, it's such a convoluted and difficult process going biking over the Triborough Bridge, and So I know that you guys are already familiar with that, but there was no mention as to how you would approve that, particularly when you're including Astoria, and you have looked at as far away places as Jackson Avenue and beyond. So it appears that the Triborough Bridge is the elephant in the room, if you will. And I'm interested in why you didn't include the Triborough Bridge.
I'll take the Triborough Bridge question. I think that as happens with every study, we start with a study area, and then somebody says, well, you should really look at this, and it gets a little bigger. And somebody else says, well, you should look at this too, and it gets a little bigger. And before you know it, we have this monstrosity of a study area that we this was a huge study area, and it really came down to our resources. And the other issue was we felt it was much more important to focus on the really important connections of Roosevelt Island, the commercial strips, the upland areas, the waterfront, where people in the community are more likely to go. I don't know how much actual demand, never mind that the MTA makes that crossing impossible. Stairs and ramps and, sharp turns. The bridge is horrible when it comes to bikes. But I just didn't see, or we just didn't see, a whole lot of demand. So we really focused the resources we had on the connections that were more important to the community.
I understand that. If I could just make one comment, I'm not sure that you can look at Astoria without looking at the Triborough Bridge. The impact of traffic overall in Astoria is a direct correlation between that and the Triborough Bridge. But I certainly understand, and I don't want to take too much time. If you could explain how you would improve the efficiency. The efficiency of disembarking a bicyclist disembarking from the Queensboro Bridge. You had mentioned that earlier.
I would like to actually, I thought about that right after you said it, and I was thinking that, when I'm standing at Queens Plaza and I'm looking at the Queens Plaza Greenway goes right onto the ramp for the bridge. But which connection are you referring to? Because then when you get off the bridge, you're faced with three options. You can kind of double back towards Vernon Boulevard. You can go kind of north and south on 21st Street or Crescent Street, or you can continue kind of eastbound towards Northern Boulevard. And the Northern Boulevard connection is pretty good. The connection to Vernon Boulevard is one of our recommendations that we'd like to improve. And the north-south one is a little tricky.
The connection to
when you kind of double back, you come off the bridge and you are the exact street that it leaves you on.
Crescent.
It leaves you on Crescent. So you can go to Crescent, you get off the bridge, and you can make a U-turn and go onto the Greenway that goes past Queensbridge houses.
Yeah.
So which connection are you referring to exactly?
the one that you have to double back.
That one we have a recommendation to repave that to Greenway Stanton's. I don't know if we went through so many of them so fast. It's in there. So we plan on improving that connection.
Okay, hi. After 37 years of living here, I love Long Island City. I love the hodgepodge of it. That's the fun of living, of going there, because we're so clean and sterile here. And I'm really worried. They're building two monsters right across from Roosevelt Island on Vernon Boulevard now that there's only one little sign up, but it's going to be like two twin 40-story buildings, all of what you're building along. These buildings all have giant garages. Go to Long Island City. These buildings you see from Roosevelt Island, you see the facade. If you go look at back at these buildings, they have 8 and 10 and 15-story garages.
Yes.
These people are not going to be taking buses. These are drivers. These are car people, most of them. Maybe they'll take the subway, which is already packed to the gills at Long Island City, and our trains and everything. I don't think the City Planning Commission should approve one more damn housing project in Western Queens. Enough is enough. They're only building luxury. There's nothing for the poor people. Hallett's Cove, no one gave a damn about bus transportation down there. That's the end of the Q102. It's the Astoria houses. Those poor people have had goddamn lousy transportation for 50 years. No one cared about them. No one cared about Vernon Boulevard. No one cared about Queensbridge. Now it's becoming luxury, and it's really sad because the people that live there and suffered all these years are getting pushed out. All the local businesses are getting pushed out by luxury housing, and we're doing all of these things to make bicyclists happy, but we're going to have thousands more drivers because every single one of these buildings is going to have giant garages. You were talking about by St. Mary's Church, by the end of Vernon Boulevard. I know I've parked there. It's a wonderful little neighborhood thing. You take away the parking, and God forbid the police have to park. Why don't you demand that the apartment houses build garages for the police department to use?
Right.
Why do the cops have to? I lived on the 19th precinct. Trust me, every street in the upper 60s is used by the police as their private parking lots. You're planning the wrong thing. You have to plan what kind of buildings you build and the height and the density. You can't suddenly dump everyone into Western Queens. You look at Long Island City. You're walking through dense little streets like Midtown Manhattan now. You have to tell your commissioner, who lives on Roosevelt Island, Mr. Weisbrot, to stop and look what they're approving. Community Board 1 and 2 in Astoria, they don't care. They'll approve anything. But, I mean, you have to look and see what you're approving. You're planning for all this stuff, but you're getting car drivers, you're getting luxury houses, you're not getting the people that are going to be using buses. And also, I don't think we have one darn use for the Q19 or Q39. I don't think there are very many people on this island that go to Sunnyside or Woodside or North Astoria. We go to Queens Plaza. And if I'm have to go to an historical meeting, I take the 102 and get off of Broadway. But I don't think there are 20 people a day that use that bus that go past Queens Plaza. So I think it's better, you better start talking to the people that live here. And
What are we doing now?
and not the statisticians, but please, that's all.
You guys have both had questions.
Yeah.
I want to get somebody had. The gentleman in the back.
Well, it's a follow-up to Sharon's question. So you said, I missed the beginning, but you said you're going to extend the bike path that goes goes west from Queensboro Bridge. There's a section of it that goes next to the houses there. It's very dark and poorly paved. You're going to repave it, you said? But did you also want to, there's no lighting. You can't see. It's not a question of whether it's paved well or not. If there's something in the road, you can't see it at all. I ride there maybe once or twice a week, or more.
That is one of our recommendations.
To address that, our recommendation is to bring it up to Greenway standards.
And
encompasses all of that.
But the
And it's
lighting is
also
important
one
too,
of
not
the-
just the paving.
No, it's also one of the places, I don't know if you caught the slide with all the lighting improvements.
No, I came a little late.
Okay, well, there are a whole slew of lighting improvements that we've asked DOT to look into.
What are your steps toward, what are your steps between now and implementation?
Well, we're going to continue to meet with various people in the community. We have 2 or 3 other meetings set up at least already. So we will continue to get feedback on these are all draft recommendations. So this gentleman is going to send us comments. I believe this gentleman is going to send us comments. We will look at those comments and we will take them into careful consideration. It looks definitely like we're going to be modifying our bus improvements because it seems like we didn't get that quite right. But once we've kind of continued the outreach, we will finalize the report and then we will continue to work with our colleagues. We at City Planning don't implement anything, unfortunately. So we will continue to work with our colleagues at the Department of Transportation, our colleagues at the MTA and New York City Transit and New York City Bus, so that some more of this can get implemented. And for the bigger ticket items, we'll have to find a way to get them into the capital budget.
Approximate date for a completed report?
I'm hopeful by the end of the year. Yes, ma'am.
So I usually drive, but I know that some friends have been trying to get over to Roosevelt Island from the Steinway Street area, and it's almost impossible to do that. There's just like no bus routes that go that way. So is there any way that that you put that into your thinking, that going east?
The
from
104.
Well, it's, you know, like
104's
something
on
going along
Steinway.
Broadway, the 104 goes
104 goes
all the way over to,
straight down Broadway, straight down Broadway. to
and then
Costco.
turns?
And then it's a Costco.
Okay.
266.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
the question is where on Steinway are you coming from?
Going.
Well, it's like going like to Home Depot and that, you know, going past Steinway and going to Home Depot, or that whole shopping area over there, if anybody wants to, you know, have a trip over there that.
Yes, sir.
Just two questions. On the ferry service, the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation has done several studies and spent a lot of money on it, and they determined that the route has to be on the Queens side of the channel, not the Manhattan side. So I'm not quite sure why. I'm absolutely sure about that. So you may want to go back and look at that in terms of the side that the ferry travels on. And the other question is on the subway. Have you looked at all into whether or not the G train can extend from Queens Plaza to Roosevelt Island and then to 57th Street? And that way you could extend it from Brooklyn to Manhattan where it
Yes,
doesn't.
It's really, really expensive.
You've looked into that?
Yes, actually, when we were thinking of, our school of thought was when the Second Avenue subway connector is built, there'll be some extra capacity and we can kind of build a new tunnel going under 21st Street and like, but then the E train is in the way. It'd be a very, very difficult feat of engineering because the G train would have to abandon its Long Island City Square station and dive deeper before that to go underneath all of the Queens Boulevard lines and then come up to meet the F train somewhere. So it'd be a very difficult descent then because you have to have a 3% grade on both sides. It's tricky, but in a world where we had unlimited money, we could do it.
We don't live in that world.
Yes, sir. My question relates to you talk about the bicycle access to the island, and you mentioned getting the bikes off the helix, which is a great idea, but you didn't talk about what you had to do that, and that's to get these escalators that exist but are not working. And I'm wondering whether you've discussed that with REAC in terms of getting those escalators, which I think we could use whether or not you change the bike route, back working again. So have you discussed that with REAC?
Didn't you say multi-purpose escalators in your?
Yeah, we were thinking of the kind of like the shopping cart escalator sort of thing, where it's a flat ramp escalator. And we met with Ray last year. We discussed it briefly and how it would work. It's tricky because there's some support columns in the building, and with most things, with enough money, we can rearrange that and make it work.
What's the shopping
Let's get a
cart
couple of
escalator?
people who haven't talked, and I think we're gonna have to one that.
If you've ever been to like a multi-level Target, they have those flat escalators that go.
They also have them in Bed Bath & Beyond,
Yes.
and in Whole Foods, on 14th Street.
Home Depot and
Yeah.
23rd.
I think we wanna make sure we get Scott in, because he's a.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, I want to say, and I think this was at a meeting you weren't present for, but maybe about 6 to 9 months ago, we had a meeting about the Q102 bus service. Might have even actually been last year, the first time we talked about it. And at one of those meetings, actually this gentleman, I think, might have made the reference to bringing some of the buses up to the turnaround at Motorgate. So actually, I would think it would be great, if perhaps it's that the Q19 and 39, if those were the two buses you were talking about, might be routes where it's less disruptive to extend the route in that way. Might have been why you chose those to be the ones that add all the time on the island. But if some of the busier routes where you're concerned about the diversion for a greater number of people just came to that very limited amount to provide the connectivity, but they could connect to the red bus, for example, so you don't have to worry about necessarily getting those to all parts of the island. I think that's really worth taking a look at now while there's this opportunity, because especially given that what you're trying to do is make it so much more possible to serve the island from all kinds of various places to accommodate the future needs as we prepare for the launch of the university. So I think that it looks like you went in a great direction, but this is something that you could do hopefully very easily that could really take it to an entirely new level. I saw that there was a very brief reference to a potential bike share site. I don't know how aware you are, but there is an overwhelming demand and desire for bike share on the island. The community board, by an overwhelming vote, I mean, it was literally something like 40-1 or 40-0 with one abstention, asked for bike share for Roosevelt Island as part of the first phase of the city bike system. So while much of the expansion of bike share is totally outside of your control, particularly since I believe that one of the original plans for phase one, when the $42 million from Citibank was announced, was that Long Island City was going to then be included, which I think was a desire of Citibank. We asked that if you were going to originally plan to go up Manhattan into, originally it was 79th Street, and go to Long Island City, that literally Roosevelt Island was along the way. What I've said many times in many places is that, to my mind, the single most important part of making bike share successful on Roosevelt Island, other than the desire for the bikes, which is already here thoroughly. I mean, there is literally overwhelming support like nowhere else in the city. But what you need is to avoid the need to bring any kind of motor vehicles onto the island that aren't already here, just to relocate bikes from the north or south end of the island to get them back to the train station and the tram station. So what I think, but this is something that the city would have to do, is to identify perhaps an operating partner on the island, either REAC or Cornell, simply to provide, for example, I think it's possible to maybe put a few bikes on some kind of a little shuttle, whether it's a bike operated or just a little small motor vehicle that could just bring the bikes back and forth so that you're not increasing truck traffic onto the island, but that allows you to redeploy, because there are times a day when there'll be so much demand to get from the extreme sides of the island to the center, closer to the transit network. But I would really like to see the transportation study support the desire for the bike share on the island and try to make that work. I think we're very close to what seems like phase 1.5. So it would, or phase 1.1, to get what actually was supposed to be phase 1. And Roosevelt Island really should have been part of phase 1. Okay. And other than that, I think you guys have done some amazingly thoughtful work, and I really support what I see, certainly that relates to Roosevelt Island.
Okay. I just want to pose a question to everybody. Questions?
I just wanted to comment. I visited Copenhagen this summer, and in many of the subway stations, they have a reverse lane leading up the stairs, upstairs, and everybody just take a bicycle and run up the stairs. And I haven't seen that in the United States, and it's so.
There is one place here that has the George Washington Bridge has it on the staircase. Okay. So we have, we know.
Yeah, I'm glad you know about it, and that's what's the only purpose I have.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, we couldn't
The
hear.
gentleman was in Copenhagen,
Yes.
and in a lot of other countries where bike use is very prevalent, what they will do is where you have stairs, usually right near the wall, they'll put a little rail, so that as you walk up the stairs, you push your bike up the rail, and that's how the bike gets up the stairs, rather than carrying it.
It's on the east side.
It's on the
When
when
go up, when the
It's on the
steps
Esplanade.
go up in the 80s, they have a
It's
rail.
very difficult to use.
That's a good point.
They're there, but they're hard to find. They're rare.
Anybody?
That bridge don't cost it.
It's
That particular bridge is actually going away, and we'll have a presentation in 2 weeks at the Transportation Committee about the plans to replace that bridge.
All right, so before we, I just want to pose one question. You guys are the Roosevelt Island experts. So a question that I have is that we initially thought a while ago about putting more buses on Roosevelt Island, but then we spoke about it with MTA, and we had some discussions, and with RIAC, and basically we were told there's just too many buses on the island now. And there's conflicts between the red bus and the MTA bus. So we had several, I heard several people discuss having buses terminated at Motorgate on top, have kind of like some major transfer point up there. I mean, in theory, if we just left all the MTA buses off the island and had 5 lines go there, would that be a reasonable transfer? Would that make sense?
Because,
yeah, listen, you're looking at it in a different point of view. I agree a lot with Bertie, but that 102 bus, red bus cannot, at peak time, carry the Roosevelt Island customers down to the subway and to the tram. I'm packed. I need that 102 in the morning. I need more 102s in the morning going southbound. And on the PM side, I need it to go the opposite way, to take them from the subway going north. But I don't need any other lines.
You mentioned that at the same meeting
Right.
that Scott referred to.
Exactly.
And I think in terms of bus service on the island, in terms of any public bus that's not the red bus, I think the residents really want efficient and reliable service.
They do have it.
That's it.
They have it with the red
I
bus.
thank you guys for,
It's getting any better.
thank you guys for coming. I think it was a real interesting study.
Right.
I think it's really good because I think even, we thought, well, should they cut down just and show Roosevelt Island? But, we use those roads. We use 21st Street. We go up Vernon Boulevard. So I think it was very important to see the whole study. I thank you for coming. Before we break up,